Somatic work is not just about your physical body. Have you ever heard of a secret place? Hi, I'm Laura, a certified somatic practitioner who specializes in the female nervous system. And what I have found is that although the word soma means body, the process of engaging in somatic work is about your body, your soul, and your spirit. This body is the vessel. It holds your soul and your spirit. But you need to interact with all three levels to bring about that healing transformation that you're looking for. I was told almost exactly 4 years ago by a friend about this concept of a secret place. She had read about it in a book. The book was called Seeing Beyond, if you want to go check that out. And she was telling me basically it's a place you go and spend time with Jesus. So you can think about this as meditating. You can think about it as using your imagination, which I would argue is more spiritual than we really acknowledge. But what you want to do to find your secret place is find a spot where you feel very comfortable, very safe. I actually started this process when I was pregnant with my third child. And so I had two older children who were still very young, still doing nap times, still needed me to rock them to sleep for bedtime. And I had this really beautiful season of my life where I was spending time every day in the middle of the day in the dark, in the quiet, rocking a baby to sleep. And then again at nighttime, in the dark, in the quiet, rocking a baby to sleep. And that peaceful, relaxing state was very conducive for me to explore and create, or what I would say now is discover, my secret place. How it was presented to me was imagining a place that is sort of your happy place. So for me, that was the beach. Immediately I was like, yes, white sand, beautiful, clear, crystal ocean. For some of you, it may be the mountains. For some of you, it may be a meadow with beautiful wildflowers. Maybe your happy place is the forest surrounded by trees. Maybe your happy place is next to a river or a stream. Whatever it is that brings you that really peaceful and calm and very aligned feeling. You know that feeling when you are somewhere and you are fully present and you do not wish to be anywhere else. You are like, I'm here and there's nowhere else in the world I would want to be right now. That is your happy place. So imagining that, taking an opportunity to maybe sit in the quiet, sit in the dark, close your eyes, and picturing that place. And it can be really helpful to kind of check in with all of your senses as you step into that place. So what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling, tasting, touching? It can be so helpful to start to really see and interact with that world. So for me, my first experience with my secret place, nap time put down. I was sitting in the dark in the nursery, rocking my 2-year-old to sleep, and I was able to start picturing a beach. And I could see, the sand dunes and a path that went up through the dunes towards the ocean, and it was almost like a little hill, and I knew the ocean was on the other side. And so I remember looking down at my feet, and you know that feeling where you can like wiggle your toes in the sand. I remember looking at my toes and wiggling them in the sand and really tapping into that sensation. And I remember looking around and noticing, it's always kind of breezy at the beach, and watching the sand dunes and the reeds kind of moving back and forth. And I remember looking up at the top of my path and seeing Jesus there. Now I'll just go ahead and caveat this now, that if you have a different kind of relationship with God, where maybe you see God in a different kind of personhood, or you see God as more of a light or a feeling. I believe that you still have access to all of that in the secret place. So I'll just go ahead and say that now. But for me, what was familiar and comfortable and felt really safe was to see Jesus at the top of that path. And I remember trying to kind of figure out and get clear on what his face looked like. And it was so hard not to put kind of these images that I've come across in my life on his face. And I remember kind of trying to sort through, like, what does he actually look like? I want to really see him. And then having this moment where he smiled at me, and it no longer mattered exactly what he looked like. I didn't really need that anymore. I had this familiar feeling and connection, and that is what I interacted with. And so I remember walking up to Jesus and just feeling this like overwhelming amount of love coming from him, and kind of this joy and excitement that we were there together and interacting in this way. And I remember him just taking my hand and walking down the beach. I could see the ocean now, and there were just these two lounge chairs at the, like, where the shore was, so where the ocean was coming in. There were just these two lounge chairs. They were kind of like the old, like, wooden, kind of beat up looking chairs. Like they'd been sitting out on the beach for a long time. And I remember we just walked down to those chairs and we sat down, and neither one of us had really said anything at that point. But he was holding my hand, and I was sitting there looking at our hands, and I was kind of just tapping into, like, you know, that feeling when you're in a dream and you can kind of make something happen. You're kind of starting to wake up and you can kind of manipulate your dream a little bit. It was that sort of sensation. And so I remember looking at our hands and thinking, like, I could move my fingers. And so I moved my fingers to sort of intertwine with his and kind of close like this. And when I did that, I had this flash of a memory come up. And so I was almost transported for just a few seconds into this memory. And the memory was a time in youth group. I think I was probably early high school. And you know, in youth group, if you were raised like me, you get up at the end or whenever you're going to do prayer requests, and everyone kind of circled up and held hands, and you would go around the room and share your prayer request. And so I remember we were circling up, and I had a friend on my left side, but on the right side was this boy that I didn't really know. I still don't even remember who he was, but I remember this moment where I went to hold hands with him, and I, without even thinking, tried to interlock my fingers with his. And I remember him making this really big, kind of loud, so at least in my memory, everyone could hear him being like, "I'm not your boyfriend, I'm not gonna hold your hand like that." And I remember feeling so embarrassed, and I could feel in that moment when I was having this memory come up, I could feel like the flush in my cheeks and like this like hotness in my chest. And as soon as I like remembered that part and noticed those feelings, I was immediately back on this beach with Jesus with our hands interlocked, and he was looking at me, and he didn't really have to say anything out loud. A lot of our interactions, it's not necessarily that he needs to say it, it's sort of just communicated. But he was looking at me and he was communicating to me, like, I love holding your hand like this. I love you so much, and I would hold your hand like this forever if you wanted to. I remember just feeling so accepted by him and so wanted and loved. And I remember the sensation of being embarrassed, those flushes in my cheek and those flushes in my chest shifting in my body. And I remember feeling this radiating warmth in my heart. And I remember it just kind of like filled my whole body. And I just sat there with Jesus for a few more minutes, and he just let me hold his hand like that and just kept this feeling of love and warmth like radiating from my heart. And then it was almost like I had this come to, and it felt like almost waking up, and I was back in my son's room holding him. He had fallen fast asleep probably several minutes before that, and I remember just kind of getting up slowly and putting him in his bed. And I remember walking out of the room, and I could still feel that feeling of warmth and love in my heart. And it felt so real. The whole experience felt so real. And I even remember standing in the hallway outside his room and like opening my palm, like expecting to see like a grain of sand in my palm, which I didn't, but that's how real the experience felt. And that was my very first time to explore this idea of having a secret place and having a face-to-face encounter with God where you experience that kind of love and acceptance. And in that particular situation, him rewiring my nervous system from the experience that I had had in high school. And that was probably 4 years ago now. And since then, I feel like those interactions and those encounters have grown into this really beautiful world where it can be a memory, or it can just be a sensation that I'm feeling, or it can be a current conflict that I'm going through. But I always have this access to go and meet with God and have that unconditional love and that co-regulation that we need so desperately as women. We need connection, and we need connection in a way that feels really safe. And so having that access to a secret place where I can go and take this thing that I'm struggling with and be met with love and compassion and no judgment and no shame. It's just so safe. And it has been this really beautiful journey for me over the past 4 years of God rewiring my entire nervous system, rewriting my subconscious beliefs. And I don't think that process ever really ends on earth, but it's crazy how much has changed for me internally in the past 4 years, and then getting to watch how that shifts everything around me as well. And so I want to share this concept because it's something I think every single human has access to. Even if you experience God in a different way, I think that we always have this access to God, to the divine, in a way that we can be met with love and acceptance and compassion, and we can be completely transformed. And some of the subconscious beliefs that I have worked on with God are things like, I'm a burden, I am too much, and I am also never enough. I'm a know-it-all. That was fun, not a fun one to work through. There's also like, my voice doesn't matter, or I'm not very strong. People don't really like me. All kinds of things, all kinds of beliefs, all kinds of these subconscious beliefs that I've collected over my life that are then shaping how I show up in the world and how I experience my life, or in a lot of ways, how I was not experiencing my life, how I had disconnected myself from my life. And God has so patiently and graciously met me in this place and rewritten those beliefs. I truly come from this place now of like, I am so unconditionally loved. I am safest when I am resting. I am the most productive and radiant when I am in a rested place. And so I've seen where in a somatic session, we're tapping into your subconscious beliefs. We're often getting images and sensations, and we're able to work through those in a variety of different ways. But I've also seen in somatic sessions where Jesus shows up, and he has beautiful grace and love and wisdom to offer. And I think this is something that, like I said, everyone has access to, and it's so radically transformative, and it's something I want to share. It's a little bit scary to share because it's not always accepted. I've often heard comments like it's just your imagination or you're making it up, and I've come to a place where I'm okay with those comments. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like, well, if that's all that it is, it's still completely rewiring me and my nervous system, and I'm okay with that. I can believe whatever I want to believe about my experiences, and they can still have this radically beautiful effect on my life and my being. So I want to invite you to explore, where is your happy place? Where is that place where you feel at peace, where you feel fully present and you don't want to be anywhere else? Explore that. Imagine all the senses there and see who shows up. See what they have to share with you. It could change everything.